Hi guys, welcome, happy Halloween. In today's video, I'll be showing you the behind the scenes of how I made a 1960s haunted house inspired set. So the general idea of this set sort of came about with Halloween approaching, and straight away I knew I wanted to do a typical spooky haunted house set. My mind always goes straight to very Scooby-Doo-esque, the crumbling Victorian mansion, very spooky, cobwebs and all that. And I thought to maybe change it up a little bit to actually have it as a 1960s mod house. I mean, enough time has passed in the last 60 years for that same amount of decay and creepiness to have set in. So I thought it'd be something interesting to explore. And yeah, I'll explain a little bit more as we go on with the video, kind of a bit of the behind the scenes of how I came up with that. But for now, let's get started. So I started with a very rough sketch of what I wanted. It wasn't going to be a very big set, but I knew I was still going to be able to get a lot of great stuff into it. Over to the left would be the edge of a fireplace. The middle, a great custom wallpaper with a striking piece of 1960s furniture front and center. Then over to the right would be a wall of windows with curtains covering them. So to kick off the project, I started by cutting down a sheet of 9mm MDF into widths of about 12mm, and this will be the start of creating the fake bricks that will be on the fireplace. I then cut down those lengths into smaller lengths of about 26 centimeters. By using a jig on the saw saves you so much time, as you can just butt all those pieces up against it, cut them, and you don't have to measure more than once. I then sanded down all of those pieces, not too much as I want to keep a nice sharp line at the edge, but just enough to take off any nicks that may have occurred. Making a little makeshift spacer helps a lot when putting these bricks up on the wall, just to make sure they are all the same distance apart. I fixed them using a brad nailer. I didn't use any glue, as that way when this project was done I could reuse the bricks for something else. And I laid the bricks out in a stacked pattern instead of a regular brick pattern, as this was a trendy design in the 1960s for any brick design and fireplaces. So when it came time to designing the wallpaper, I was actually inspired by a 1960s wallpaper that's at my grandparents' house. I've always loved this design, but I thought to make it a little bit more creepy, I would taper out the shapes to a point in the end to really keep in that creepy and threatening theme. So to create the templates for the wallpaper design, I drew up a jagged shape that I liked the general size of, traced that out onto pieces of thicker cardboard, cut them out to create a template, then laid them out onto pieces of vinyl adhesive that would then be stuck onto the wall. Looks quick on here, oh boy did it take quite some time. So for the base of the wall, I painted it a lovely deep navy blue. And then when it came time to sticking these stencils on, you pretty much just have to draw up a bit of a grid to know exactly where all the points are going to hit, and then peel them off, stick them on, and you are good to go. And of course, every project reaches a phase like this where it looks utterly crazy, but you know there's all for a good cause. And of course, when it comes to anything using a stencil or painter's tape, you want to go in with the same color that is underneath it, just to make sure that there's no bleeding and that there are very nice crisp lines. And now for the actual painting, I went in with a round foam sponge that really gave a great texture to the paint and made it look a little bit more like wallpaper than just paint on paint. I went in with a kind of ivory color, then went in with a darker grey for the bottom half, and then at the very tip, a brown color. And in between all of the stencils, I used 2 pieces of painter's tape just to create a little dash for the extra pattern. And then after all of that work, the most satisfying part, peeling it all off, which, so satisfying. If it did bleed a little bit like you can see there, pretty easy to go in with just a little painter's brush and fix up any mistakes. And yeah, just take your time with this to make sure that you don't rip any of the paint off. And yeah, oh so satisfying. So as a bit of background to how I actually came up with this idea in the first place, knowing that I wanted to do a Victorian spooky haunted house kind of vibe, I was looking at my collection and didn't have anything that predated the 1950s pretty much in decor and furniture, all that. A few little bits and pieces, but not much. And because this was done in lockdown, so I couldn't get anything new or secondhand new to me, I knew that it had to be something a bit different. I did think about sticking a pin in the haunted house thing and maybe next Halloween or any time in the year for that matter, but that's what sparked the idea of, well, hang on a second, why not making a mid-century house into a haunted house? Again, enough time has passed for that same spookiness and all that to have set in, so that was actually the base of the idea, and I'm very happy about that because I don't know if I would have thought of it other than having to kind of think of it. But yeah, so the tricky part was to marry together what looks like a believably 1960s house with that spooky haunted house vibe. It was tricky, I'm not gonna lie. I'm pretty happy with how it turned. I'm very happy with how it turned out in the end, but throughout the process, trying to get those two to really match up was definitely a challenge. And now back to those bricks. So I actually use a very different method than I would normally use. A lot of the other fake bricks that I've made, similar with the MDF, but I've then gone in with a Dremel before I've put them up to really get in and score them and nick them and all of that and make them look like very, very old bricks. With this, because I knew there would be more of a style 1960s show brick, I actually put them on the wall as they were and I was going to add the texture on top of it. So to create the mortar, I went in with a gap filler in a gun and filled all of that, smoothed it out with my finger, not too much, you still want a slightly rough kind of look. And once that's dry, you just scrape it all off, which is, again, very satisfying. So to add that texture to the brick, taking good old sand, nothing special about it, and mixing it with paint. This creates a really amazing texturizing paint that once applied to the brick and the mortar, it, I guess, creates the look of brick and mortar. I mean, pretty simple. You want to get a little bit more on the brick than the mortar, and then on that brick you want to add a few layers, making it thicker in some areas to make it look a bit more rough, and this creates a little bit more of an illusion to make it look like real brick. So then going into the mortar with a smaller artist's brush, I went in with a slightly beigey grey, and then I had to go in with another artist brush and kind of trace the outline of each brick. I've done fake bricks so many times before, and I forgot to make the texturizing paint the color of what the bricks were going to be. So that did mean having to spend a bit more time going in and making sure the paint got into all of the rough areas and all the grooves and all that. Wasn't too bad in the end, just a little bit more time. And then went in and filled in the bricks a similar color to the mortar, a little bit of a richer color, and it was a little bit darker as well. Then going in with a mix of mostly water with a little bit of brown paint in it with an artist brush into all of the mortar. This creates a really dirty look, like it's been there for quite some time. And then going in with a beige color and a grey color, really dry brushing it onto the front of the bricks. The paint picks up on all of the rough parts of the brick, which adds a lot more depth and really brings the bricks to life. So for the hearth of the fireplace, which is the piece of stone that is on the ground, I used multi-purpose foam board. This is actually the first time using this foam board, and wow, you can really do anything with it. It is great. I'm surprised I haven't found it earlier. But I just cut it down into about a depth of, I think, 30 centimeters, and then stacked it one on top of each other, glued it, put some books on it to make sure that it dried nice and easy, and sanded the edges down. I then went in with a grey colour that had a little bit of brown in it to give a bit of warmth, and because the foam was already so porous, it actually gave the illusion of stone pretty quickly, which was nice and easy. So now getting to the windows, which are over to the right of the set. I did not use real windows for this, as they were going to be completely covered by sheer curtains and regular curtains, so I just created a simple frame out of pine. And then before I put the frame up, I made sure to hang a black sheet on the wall just to make sure that you couldn't see anything through the sheer curtains. Now to the curtains themselves. I actually want to hand make some curtains for this, but I didn't actually have any fabric in my collection that would be perfect for it. So when it came to the sheer curtains, I just used a simple pair of IKEA sheer curtains. They were way too crisp and white, so I wanted to dye them. Didn't have any fabric dye, so I actually tried dyeing them with paint and water, and lo and behold, it actually worked out really well. So if you're in a pinch and you need to dye something, paint does work. I do not know about the wearability of it, but it certainly works with something in set design. So once they were soaked, dried, and ironed, the sheer curtains went up, and in terms of the curtains in front of them, I again wanted to custom make some, but my 60s fabric stash is dwindling a little bit and there wasn't anything quite right for this project. So again, I actually used a pair of IKEA curtains in this lovely 60s green, but to give them a little bit more of a 60s touch, I actually pinned a gold ribbon to the side, and because I didn't want these curtains to always have the ribbon and I didn't want to damage the fabric, I actually went in and pinned from behind, which was a little bit fiddly, but worked quite well in the end. And then to give them a much more worn-in look without actually damaging the curtain, I went in with a scalpel and cut up the ribbon a little bit. And now bringing in the furniture, This Chrysler stereophonic radiogram is one of my all-time favorite pieces. It is absolutely stunning and a perfect fit for this project. And one piece that I've been waiting years to use, especially like this had to be used in a haunted house or something similar, is this really creepy bust of a man with a very, very mean looking expression on his face and a big scar down one eye. I got this from a deceased estate sale years ago. I didn't even know how long it was, like maybe 6 or 8 years ago or something. And the person there, who is friends with the lady who had made it, had said that it was a bust of that woman's ex-husband, which just made it all the more creepy. So he's been sitting in our basement on a shelf for the last many years, creeping us all out anytime we go down there. I think at some point we kind of put something in front of him so we didn't have to look. But he finally got a new life in this. So to give old mate a bit of a new look, I cut down that same foam board that I used for the hearth into a bit of a thicker base for him, just to give him a bit more heft. I then went in and cut down the sides to make it look a little bit more like stone. So when I got him, he was just an unfinished terracotta, but I went in and painted him a mid-tone grey, and then went in and weathered him to give him a lot more depth. So again, just going in similar to before with a very, very dry brush, going into all its crevices and everything, and this was not at all a creepy experience having to stare this right at the face while I was painting this, but it certainly made him look that bit creepier in the end. And then for one of my favourite, more so fantastical moments in this set was taping off one of the spikes in the wallpaper and making a little concoction of fake blood and black paint, and basically making it look like it has been stabbed into something or someone. Maybe not the most realistic thing, but again, it adds to that creepy haunted house, little bit Scooby-Doo-esque vibe. And now it is finally time for styling. This lamp is a lovely mid-century design with a great atomic shade. I actually picked this up at a production sale on a Netflix show that I was a stand-in for, so it's had a pretty happy life in set design so far. Next to that lamp we have Old Mate coming in hot, and in front of him a pile of lovely mid-century books and a great alarm clock. So when it came to using anything glass in this project, I wanted to dirty it up with a mix of water and dirt, which comes off easily in a wash. So I applied that onto this lovely atomic vase and left a little bit inside of it to look like evaporated water. And then filled the vase with some dead ferns and some dried mountain devils. And then over to the left on the radiogram, I want to actually have the record player open. And what better record for a mid-century haunted house to have than Bobby Boris Pickett's Monster Mash. On the edge of the fireplace that we see, I hung a lovely 1960s painting that has a wonderfully creepy vibe to it. I like to think that in the full fireplace there would have been a set of 3 of these paintings across the whole thing. Below that on the hearth, I knew I wanted a collection of objects. There were a few vases, again bringing in that dead fernery aspect, and a few books and whatnot. And then over on the other side of the set, a small stack of books and some more dead plants because this is a haunted house after all. And of course, what would a haunted house be without spiderwebs? This was actually my first time using these fake spiderwebs, which are pretty common just from the local supermarket. And I actually bought 5 bags of them, and I think I used about a quarter of one bag, so there's a few left over. But they were pretty tricky to use to make actually look realistic, but with a bit of time, a lot of time, they worked quite a treat in the end. So with that, and a bit of dust and a bit of debris added off camera, I think we are ready for the reveal. well, there was some dodgy B-grade horror movie acting that no one asked for, but you got it anyway. I'm so happy with how the set turned out. I definitely had one or two doubts along the process of making it, but I'm so happy I persevered. It turned out far better than I actually imagined it would have. I hope you guys liked it. I hope you guys liked the video as well. I will hopefully be getting a few more videos out there pretty shortly. And yeah, I hope you guys are having a very happy Halloween and staying safe, and I will see you guys soon. Bye guys.